Why didn't Armenia prepare militarily for this? Things are getting very expensive in Armenia and the wages aren't catching up quick enough. Is there something that the country is doing to help at least people survive just on a monthly basis with the wages? What made you run for council in Glendale?
But I will tell you this, Armenia's military budget never surpassed maybe $450 million.
Oh, wow.
But how do we, as Armenians, identify ourselves, especially to foreigners? We're the first Christian nation.
You can't play that
we're
card.
Not. But we're not.
We still currently have hostages in Baku. What is the country of Armenia doing to get those hostages released? We have obviously another election coming up in Armenia. The people are continuously voting for Pashinyan to sit in office. What do you foresee happening June of 2026? Do you think he'll be reelected as prime minister again?
Our young people who died, like our brothers, our sons who sacrificed their lives for our homeland, are being rounded off to the next 1,000.
Would you consider the Velvet Revolution an actual Velvet Revolution, or would you consider it just the removal of one prime minister and the replacement with another?
So that's a very good question.
What's going on in Armenia with the church? Can you dab a little bit on that?
I'm going to say something. It's going to be very controversial now.
Welcome back, everybody. Happy Monday.
DG.
Or actually happy Wednesday, or doesn't matter actually at this point.
Happy week.
Happy week. There you go. Happy week. Welcome back, everybody. WiseNutspodcast.com. Go to our website, buy some merch. Link is right there. Click on that link. Shirts are under $30. You could get our throwback WiseNuts, which I'm actually wearing underneath, just like Superman. And our Epstein didn't kill himself t-shirt is online as well. You could pick that up under $30, less than a Frappuccino at Starbucks.
Yes. I had to get a warm tea this morning.
I saw, and I'm glad it's not on camera because they're not paying us.
I know. I mean, they've emailed us the agreement. We're having the attorneys review.
I'm telling you, we got to go with coffee bean and tea leaf.
Especially since one of our sponsors, Alex, used to be legal counsel for them.
Yeah, exactly. Shout out to Alex. We have a very, very special guest all the way from the motherland, Mr. Zareh Sinanyan. How are you, Zareh?
I'm well. How are you, fellas?
Thanks for doing this, man.
It's a pleasure.
Long time in the making. Last time you were here, we tried to schedule it, didn't pan out, but I'm glad we were able to make it work this time.
Better late than never.
Yeah.
Exactly. First question. You are in the States. What brings you to LA?
Just here for some meetings. I do these periodically. Like I visit other communities and meet with community organizations and people who are active with Armenia. So hadn't been here since, let's say, February of this year, if I'm not mistaken. And that was a very short visit. So here, just going to do some visits and some meetings and move on to the rest of the U.S.
Nice. Originally, when were you a Glendale City Council member? When did you get elected into council?
So I was elected in 2013. I was reelected in 2017, and I resigned in mid-2019.
Well, before we get to the resignation, what made you run for council in Glendale and get into politics? Because you're an attorney.
Yeah.
So what was it that made you become a council member?
A lot of things, but it was basically a process. It happened over time. I right out of law school, I just kind of wanted to concentrate on my profession and make money and pay off my loans. Get a family going. But some of my friends, my college buddies, my UCLA buddies, who I was hanging out with a couple of nights ago, they convinced me to get involved with community activism, and they said, "Hey, we're setting up a Burbank ANCA chapter," and I had no interest because, again, I wanted to concentrate on sort of my life, but I got talked into it, and one thing led to another. Before I knew it, I was participating in every one of the local elections. Me and a friend, another UCLA buddy who is now Glendale council member, we had not a podcast, but a TV show. We were 24 years old, and we had our own TV show about politics every Saturday morning on Horizon TV. And again that, and then another election, then another election. Then I started being like a volunteer staff attorney on election days for certain campaigns. Helped with fundraising. At some point, I want to say 2016, then Mayor and Council Member Rafi Manukyan offered and appointed me to a city commission, to the Parks Commission. So that was my foray into actual city administration in a way. And then 2 years afterwards, I basically had 4 or 5 different council members appoint me to different commissions. I ended up with the CDBG, and then I was reappointed to CDBG, which is the Community Development Block Grants Commission. Okay. It's a federal grant. I don't know if it exists anymore because,
there's still a community development, but I don't know if
with this administration, they're sort of slashing everything. I don't know if it exists, but it's an important chunk of money that the federal government doles out to local municipalities, and the municipalities on the spot through these commissions decide on how to distribute them to those community organizations that do something good.
Okay. You mentioned something about a UCLA buddy and you doing TV shows on Horizon. Yeah. And you current council member, is it Artie?
Yeah.
Oh, so you and Artie were doing a show together.
2000.
Oh, interesting.
2000. And I was actually at the time of the back then very controversial Adam Schiff, Jim Rogan race. It was there was an incumbent Republican Congress member, and there was this young state assemblyman, if I remember, former prosecutor Adam Schiff, who was challenging him, and that was the motivator for the show in a way. That's what that campaign was very, very controversial. Why? Because Jim Rogan was the Congress member who spearheaded President Clinton's impeachment process. I don't know if you guys remember that. It was back in the day. And the Democrats, basically wanted to unseat him. And so it coincided. It was very interesting. It was, especially for a young person to be on TV just talking about politics once a week for an hour and inviting guests and being both serious and silly and kind of picking on other community activists who were not necessarily in our camp. So that made it entertaining and interesting, but we took it seriously. I mean, for us, it was, well, at least I shouldn't talk for him. I took it seriously. So it led to these things in the future.
How long did you guys do that for?
I think it was a year.
Okay, so it was basically it was for Schiff's campaign essentially.
No, I don't want to say that, but it may seem so. I mean, I look back at it, it certainly may seem like it was.
When did you resign from? You said 2017.
2019.
And what was the purpose? What was the reason behind it? Because you were very involved in the Pashinyan kind of Velvet Revolution, as they call it.
Yeah, I mean, look. This again, it's a process. Like this isn't something that happened overnight. I've always been involved with Armenia. I think at some point, even back when I was at UCLA, my first year at UCLA, the first Artsakh War was going on. And how many college students can you find, American, who actually during the summer dropped everything and went to back then like miserable war-torn Armenia? I mean, when I say that, you guys have heard about this, right? No electricity, no running water.
You're talking about 90, 91, 92.
The summer of 93. Summer of 93, first war. And I was one of those few people who did. I left everything and I went to Armenia.
When did you come to the States, though, originally?
We came in the beginning of 88.
So 88, you were here in literally
5 years. I hadn't been to Armenia.
And 5 years later, you went back.
5 years later, I went back, and the only reason I went 5 years later is because we had absolutely no money for me to be able to go to Armenia. And during that my first college year, I was getting scholarships and I had grants, so I put together some money so that I could make my way to Armenia.
Did you serve in the army in Armenia?
No. I see. The thing is, I left as a minor. I left as a person with no citizenship. So we were stateless people because we left the Soviet Union, and then the Soviet Union ceased to exist. So all of a sudden, you've left a country that doesn't exist. You don't have their citizenship. You have a green card. You're on your way to citizenship, U.S. citizenship, but there was never an issue of serving in the army or anything.
Yeah, because one of the conversations we've had with several people who, I don't want to say escape Armenia, but try to avoid service. Is, you know, they take their children and they flee because they don't want their 18-year-old boy serving in the army.
It's a major issue, and again, that sort of will lead us into more deeper discussion about state building and sort of taking responsibility for the fate of the state, because a state is a construct, right? It's an abstract. It's in our minds. A state only exists because we decide that we're going to form an entity that is going to represent our joint interest as opposed to our individual interests. That's what a state is. Well, a construct like that needs to be supported and needs to be funded and needs to be administered and defended. So, but this is a different conversation. So I was in college. I was very connected. I went to Armenia, volunteered with the AYF that summer, went to Artsakh during the war, saw everything with my own eyes, spent like a week there. And then in 95, I again volunteered. I went and worked for back then, the president, or specifically national security advisor for Armenia. Mind you, I'm like 20 years old at this point. And I'm creating all these things by myself. It's not like these programs existed. Now you can send your teenager, you can send your college kid to Armenia. There's a myriad of internships and fellowships.
And back then, Levin was in office, right?
Yeah, Levin was he was the president. Okay. But back then, none of this existed. Yeah. So we had to do our own thing if we so chose. But not too many did. Not too many people did. But anyway, so this connection was there. After 95, I was kind of disappointed with sort of the direction that I saw Armenia going in. I could tell that it's going towards like this horrible, corrupt place where education wasn't going to be respected nor needed, or the industry was being dismantled. Science was obsolete because all the scientists were fleeing the country. They were no longer needed. That no one was hiring, no one was paying them. So I didn't like where it was going. And I said, okay, just concentrate on your own life, just be done with college, go to law school, make some money. But then again, after a while in the mid 2000s, sort of my connection to Armenia rekindled. I started visiting again once every 4 years, 3 years. But things really, really changed when I started having kids. When I had kids, I said, okay, so there's a choice to be made. If I'm gonna be an American, I have to be American all in. Like I have to be the best American, period. None of this like dual split personality. Split personality where you can't tell which one you are. And as I had 1 kid, 2 kids, 3, 4. And with the first kid, it was clear to me that she was Armenian. Like she was Armenian, her first language was Armenian, she was thinking in Armenian. By the time we got to the 4th kid, I realized my kids are not quite Armenian because they couldn't even formulate their Armenian their sentences were in English, but with Armenian words. And that was, for me, that was a trigger. That was like, wow, okay, so this is happening.
So were they speaking Armglish or was it strictly English?
First of all, when there's a lot of them, amongst themselves, they start speaking English. Right? No matter how much the grandparents try and the nanny and the parents, like Hayren Khosid. Oh, how many times can you correct the kid and tell him Hayren Khosid? 100 times a day, 200 times a day. After a while, it's insincere. It's almost stupid. Like this kid's reality is in English, Anyway, so I saw these things happening, but still, I was like, okay, well, that's fine. Fine. Armenia, I don't know, like looks like there's no future. The corruption is like out of control. The budget hasn't grown in 10 years. People are leaving in droves, like at least a third of the population is left. And very often, very educated. I mean, the people who had better chance of being employed outside of Armenia were more likely to leave. And this process, this drain, this, it was like Armenia was being bled almost. And I watched it happen. So that was happening. So although I kept going to Armenia and taking my kids to Armenia during the summers, I just couldn't see a future there for myself or for my kids. And all of that changed in 2018 when the Velvet Revolution happened. People sort of got out on the streets and said, "Nah, enough. You're gone. You're out. We want a change, and the revolution happened. Now I knew some of the people involved with the revolution because I had ran into them in Yerevan. That's how I knew. Like, there's nothing
But
special.
you weren't anticipating the revolution
No.
as far as like, okay, this is going to take place, and then we're going to hire you to be our high commissioner of
Not at all.
Diaspora Affairs.
Not at all. I was not anticipating, because I had watched several popular movements sort of fizzle out over time. There was Electric Yerevan, there was the Mashtots Burak, where young people would start demonstrating, and then the government was able to suppress it. Actively, passively, but they didn't last.
You were involved here as well, as far as like town halls and protests. Where you were I don't want to say front and center, but you were at least one of the head leaders as far as creating some sort of movement.
Undoubtedly, because when it started happening, first of all, my parents were there when it was happening, and I was getting like,
they were living there or
directly.
visiting?
They were visiting there. My parents started spending a lot of time in Armenia as they got older, and they retired. They had the time. So I was hearing things not only from my parents, but also I started calling, Pashinyan, and saying like, oh, this is like, it's actually happening. Like, it seems like they're not going to let it go this time. And it was very unexpected to me. I think it was unexpected to everyone. It was unexpected to the people who led the revolution, because they had witnessed a lot of political movements fizzle out. They had witnessed people become apathetic and saying like, we can't change anything. We're powerless. We have no power. We have no influence. But this time around, it was very different. And it was universal. Even people, who were somehow connected to the corrupt regime, they were like, okay, enough, done. Like, next thing is death. And I think the difference now that I look back on it, the difference was the 4-day war in 2016.
Aprilian, right?
Aprilian. What happened was, during the war, is that we sort of got a foretaste of what was to come in 2020, in the sense that Armenia was just absolutely unprepared for that challenge.
Yeah, it looked somewhat like they threw a bone, and we went for it.
They attacked in a very sophisticated, modern way, which Armenia did not expect and was not ready for. Armenia didn't understand that the world had moved on since 1994, since the ceasefire, and that Azerbaijan had invested enormous amounts of money, not only in armaments, but in training of its military, its infrastructures. It had brought in all kinds of expertise from countries that have technology and know how to train militaries. I mean, front center, Israel, Turkey, of course, but Israel really played a huge role in technologically advancing Azerbaijan's military.
Well, that's one thing a lot of people don't know, is that Israel was the country that sold the weapons to Azerbaijan.
Israel is the country that sold the high-tech weapons to Azerbaijan. The country that sold most of the weapons to Azerbaijan was who?
The United States?
Oh, no. Armenia's ally, Russian Federation, sold $5 to $6 billion of weaponry to Azerbaijan in the 10 years preceding the 2020 war.
So why didn't Armenia do the same? Why didn't we prepare militarily for this? Because we saw it as I mentioned, during Aprilian, as you mentioned as well, where they threw the bone to see, who's coming out of the doghouse.
Right.
And they saw, instead of, that Gampar, they saw a Chihuahua come out.
Yeah, a Chihuahua, an initiated Chihuahua.
Yeah, and it was like, all right, so we saw what that is. We have 4 years to prepare our military and go in hard. And that's what happened. Aprilian should have been some sort of indication to our people and to our government that, hey, listen, shit's about to hit the fan. I think we need to prepare militarily.
Of course. So why didn't they? Because that was not their priority. It was not a priority. The people who were in power until the revolution, and I know you're going to ask, well, how about after the revolution? But let's before 2018, these people, all they wanted was making their millions and moving them out to offshores and buying homes in Mykonos and buying diamond mines in Africa. I mean, that's what they did.
Don't forget Mulholland in the States.
Yeah, of course, Mulholland in the States, Beverly Hills, Bel Air, these people are, there's like 40, 50 families in Armenia became multimillionaires, some of them billionaires, and the rest of the country suffered. So why didn't they? Their priorities weren't there. There was no governmental budget. Do you know what Armenia's 2018 budget was?
I have no idea.
Military? Or
No. The
overall?
total spending budget of the Republic of Armenia. I'll tell you, the Glendale city budget was approximately $1 billion. Entire country of Armenia's spending budget in 2018, so the last pre-revolutionary budget, was $2.95 billion. This is a country that has to sustain a military. Like Glendale doesn't have to sustain a military. It doesn't have to sustain.
So Glendale
healthcare.
spends more money on their police department than Armenia did on their military, in essence. If you,
I don't want to, since I'm a lawyer, so I don't want to throw numbers around, but I will tell you this: Armenia's military budget never surpassed maybe $450 million.
Oh, wow.
Regime, whereas Azerbaijan's at some point reached $5 billion. So you had 11-to-1 spending disbalance, imbalance between the two countries. And just a fun fact, you know what Armenia's spending budget is for next year?
for the military, or
Just the entire country budget. So we're going from, our starting point is 2.95.
I'm hoping it's at least 10.
It is $10 billion.
Okay.
Yes.
So okay,
is it?
Yeah. It's $10 billion, and this money, or this growth in the budget has come about despite COVID, despite a catastrophic, ruinous war, the 2020 war, the displacement of our brethren from Karabakh, despite the political instability that was like, you heard about that. It's just constant political instability, constant efforts from outside to destabilize the country. Despite all that, our budget has grown by 200%.
So the budget is different than the GDP?
Of course, yeah.
So it's a percentage of the GDP then?
No, the budget is the total pot of money that you are to spend for your needs. That's the budget. The GDP is a numerical calculation of how much money a country has, how much wealth it has per person. There's like GDP per capita, there's GDP, there's some slight differences. But so another fun fact that has happened in the last 5-6 years, Armenia's per capita GDP, meaning per person money being spent, wealth, is higher than both Georgia and Azerbaijan. And isn't that interesting that a country that has all the gas and oil in the world, the average Azeri is basically poorer than the average Armenian?
Yeah,
it's inexplicable.
It's when you look at Azerbaijan or even Georgia as well, outside of the capital, it's very, very poor. So, I mean, Armenia is as well when you look at it. When you look at Yerevan, beautiful, very Europeanized. As soon as you leave it, again, we do have other cities that are very gentrified. Gyumri is one of them. Ejmiadzin, again, very gentrified. Abovyan, very clean, very gentrified. But when you look at Baku and you look at Georgia's Tiflis, it's basically Turkified. Both cities.
I mean, since I haven't been to Baku and I haven't been to Azerbaijan, I don't know what that contrast looks like. I agree with your contrast in Armenia. There's drastic contrast. Once you leave Yerevan, the difference is palpable. I mean, not in the best sense. But in Azerbaijan, I just look at the numbers that are out there internationally, and the numbers speak for themselves.
But the people outside of those cities are living very, very poor. The one thing about Armenia that I noticed was the people were very happy. The people were very, I want to say, optimistic about the future, which was surprising to me because I hadn't been there in 22 years. What I had seen online was everybody in Armenia is disappointed. Everybody in Armenia is miserable. There needs to be a regime change. And that's the mindset I went to Armenia with. Again, I kept an open mind, but I was like, okay, expect it. And when I got there, and I begin to speak to locals, and this is in multiple cities, including what's it called? The villages as well. When you speak to the people there and you ask them, how is life? They all go, thank God, everything is great. We're very happy. And I asked them, I said, listen, it's the complete opposite in America. They're saying you guys are miserable. Like, no, we're fine. We're happy.
The amount of misinformation and disinformation that is out there in the U.S. specifically, and we're talking about the Armenian community in the U.S., is incredible. There's no other community in the world. There's no other place in the world, including the Russian Federation, which is, not very friendly to Armenia, as you may know, where the community's perception of the reality of Armenia is so skewed and so out of touch with the facts on the ground. It's fascinating.
Why though?
I'll tell you, it's a very simple answer. Distance. That's all it is. Because a person in Russia, like a person who lives in, I don't know, Nizhny Novgorod, and that person hears the same type of disinformation. Plus, he may actually hear like Russian propagandists, like state-sponsored propagandists on TV spewing horrible disinformation about Armenia. But then, odds are that 2 months later, he's going to be in Armenia, visiting his village, or he's going to be visiting Yerevan. And that's when the moment of reality comes. They come into contact with what's actually happening on the ground. So the misinformation is being canceled. It's being balanced with the physical presence that you have in Armenia. Well, what's the distance between LA and Yerevan? It's like 10,000 miles at least, right? 10,000 miles is a long distance. People don't come to Armenia as often as they do from Europe, from Russian Federation, and that has its impact. And of course, the fact that the media is totally controlled by certain political interests that, to put it mildly, are not well received in Armenia and have all the wrong motivations in the world, and they just get out this horrible information about Armenia that's just not true.
Yeah.
How often, of course, it didn't happen this summer, but the previous summers where folks would call and be like, oh, we were going to come to Armenia, but we heard that there are mass protests and there's revolution and there's fighting on the streets, so we decided that maybe we shouldn't come. And I'm like, you're talking about Armenia, right? Like what you're describing, you think that's what's happening in Armenia? And they're like, yeah, but that's what the news said. That's what, there's like Aspanes and Zartonk are saying. And you're like, Jesus Christ, please come. And if there's anything wrong, I will pay for your trip, your family's trip, everything. Just come and see. And they come and they're like, you mean these 200 people is the demonstrators? I'm like, yeah. And the 150 of them are here on vacation from LA and Beirut. They're here to demonstrate and leave.
It's so funny you said that. So when I was there in September, there was a protest going on right in front of, I guess, the parliament, right?
Sure.
And there was probably, as you said, not even 200. It was probably there were more police officers than there were people. And I saw it as I was driving to the studio to meet with Ed, because we were filming another episode there. And I was like, you know what? I'm curious about this. I took notes in my phone and I said, I literally put in check VPN, ARTN. So I remembered. Finished the podcast. I get home or get to the house. I open up my VPN and I go to my TV app and I go on ARTN just to see what's going on the news. And it showed that protest in a completely different manner.
It's the same way everywhere. I mean, a couple of years ago when there was protests going on, I think around Paris, we happened to be there. And I was concerned. I'm like, if we go outside or once we get to Paris, it's going to be thousands of people all over the place. I couldn't locate the protests.
It's fascinating. Why do they do that?
Well, they're propaganda, right?
It's propaganda, yeah.
Son of a...
What the hell was that, bro?
You okay?
Yeah, man. Oh, Magarnichinla. We should call Alex.
If you've been injured in a car accident, slip and fall, or work injury, reach out to Magarnichin Law today.
At Magarnichin Law, we maximize your compensation, you get constant client communication, and we win when it matters most. When you're involved in an accident, choosing the right attorney is the most important decision you can make. Let us show you why we're different at Megradichian Law. With 11 attorneys on our team, we're able to go to trial and fight for your case. More important, the pedigree of our firm is customer service, so you always get a call, you always get an update. Lastly, we're results driven. We win. Let us show you how. Call us at 818-530-1300 or bestcaraccidentattorney.com.
If you've been injured in a car accident, trip and fall, nerve, muscle, joint, any sort of pain at all, hit up Dr. Rafi. He'll take care of everything from A to Z. What's the number at?
818-407-0007.
And tell him the WiseNuts sent you.
That leads me to ask you, Zareh, as far as your position goes, High Commissioner, Diaspora Affairs, what does that position mean? Because you're stating that the diaspora is so, especially LA, is so far away from Armenia that we're disconnected. So the misinformation is far more believable than if we happen to live in,
France,
like you said, France or Russia or wherever else, right? But then what is your position? What are you responsible for as the High Commissioner for Diaspora Affairs?
Sure, kind of a foundational question. So the Office of the High Commissioner is basically the Ministry of the Diaspora. It's just named something else, but same ministry, it's in the same place. And we are tasked with formulating, managing, sort of improving the relations between Armenia and the Armenian diaspora, sort of in a nutshell. But what does that mean? Well, that means a lot of things. That means, going and meeting and listening to people and presenting them our programs. We have a myriad of programs, by the way. We have everything from a summer camp to youth internships to fellowships to conferences that we organize, cultural, professional. We organize big summits. I mean, anything and everything that has to do with the diaspora. We support diaspora programs. We fund some programs out, that are in the diaspora. So we do all these things with the main goal of engaging the diaspora, keeping them connected to Armenia, getting them to understand Armenia more and better. And also we have a second track, which deals with repatriation. We provide repatriation services. We 2 years ago opened the first ever Armenian Center for Integration and Repatriation, or Repatriation and Integration. And we are creating the infrastructure for repatriation to Armenia. So this is what we do. And we have a staff of about 35 people at the offices and also at the center, at the Repatriation Center. And we have folks in the communities that are also our representatives. So we have this concept called diasporan commissioners. So we find influential folks in the communities that are committed, willing, able, respected enough, have enough clout to become our boots on the ground. Because, we're back there, right? And people are living their real lives where they live. And it's hard for us to be everywhere and deal with 7 to 10 million people in the diaspora in an effective and timely manner from Yerevan. It's not doable.
But see, that's the thing, because, for example, looking back since the revolution, right, over the last 7 years,
Yep.
and you've taken that position in 2019, so 6 years.
Yep.
How is the message being delivered? Because for example, me personally, I don't know if you guys have, I've never seen anything as far as, let's say, maybe social media page or some type of clip or a website, something that states, okay, this is what we do. This is how we're connecting the diaspora to Armenia. These are the programs we have available. Maybe, have you guys seen anything?
No, I haven't. Which again, I kind of want to piggyback on this. We obviously all of us know each other through Glendale.
Yeah.
You leaving in 2019, 6 years ago, we would hope to see you more often. Meaning, whether it's a social media presence or some sort of news outlet or something where you go, it's Zareh. Zareh's going to say something, or something's going to be happening as far as a connection. He's going to give us an update, some sort of accomplishment, whether it's in the through the diaspora or in Armenia? Like it was very quiet.
Yeah. So let me.
That's why we
try
have
to
no
address-
idea what
address this
the
issue.
you
Yeah,
know
so
the ministry even
we
does.
are present on every social media platform there is. I mean, with the exception of outliers. We have pages that are dynamic, that change literally every day. We post every little development that takes place, whether it's connected with me, whether it's connected with our staff, with the office, with things that are happening in the diaspora. We have a web page, again, that is updated on several times a day with new stuff, new content. I mean, we create video content, we create audio content, it's all out there. And of course, those people that haven't seen it, they haven't seen it. And it's like, I'm not denying that you haven't seen it, but my retort is like, well, we're there and we tried to reach out and we tried to make it as easy for folks to have access to this information, but it's not always that it works. And again, we're there, we have limited resources, we have what we have, and folks are all over the place. I don't come to LA nearly as often as I go to some of these other communities that are closer. And this is going to sound a little harsh, but that are much more impactful and effective as far as Armenia is concerned. So, for example, France. France is a place that, as opposed to the US, like with all this political activism that has happened over the decades, since probably the 60s and 70s, with all the lobbying, with all the money spent, like in our Armenian reality, as far as Armenia is concerned, national security, Artsakh security back in the day, there's nothing from the U.S. We never saw the U.S. government ever. You know what I mean? Like they never.
How though?
But look at the French. Look at the French. For example.
No, wait. Before you go to the French, how though? You see all these nonprofit organizations collecting all this money. In fact, I mean, Armenia Fund, who did a telethon, did they do a telethon this Thanksgiving again?
I didn't see it. I don't know.
Again, I don't know if they did one. I think you would know better than we would if they did a telethon or not. But so, what about there? I mean, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars raised every year.
Sure. Let's put things into context. In the 1990s, when Armenia was just emerging as a country, and its national budget was something like $300 million, literally, like 93, 94, it was 300, 400, maybe top, maximum $500 million. Armenia Fund was raising money, and it was raising, let's say, $20, $25 million a year. I mean, do the comparison. $20, $25 million a year for a country whose budget is 300 million or 400 million. That's a lot of money. I mean, that money was very impactful. And all these other organizations, small organizations that were raising funds or whatever, they're buying clothing or whatever it was they were doing was very impactful in the 90s. Today, Armenia Fund raises $10 million, $11 million a year for a country whose budget is $10 billion. So things have completely changed. I mean, diaspora sort of remained, and some, you could argue, regressed from the 90s levels, because again, back then, I think there was way more enthusiasm, and people are just fatigued from giving money too, because everything can't be in terms of money. But I didn't mention money. You mentioned money. I was talking about political activism. I was talking about impacting, for example, how the U.S. government treated Nagorno-Karabakh, or how U.S. government back in the day treated Armenia. Where was that impact? Was Armenia's security at all increased as a result of it? You answer that question. I'll leave that up to you. But for example, for France, right? This is a country that today is a major weapons supplier to Armenia. Like we pay for it cash. I mean, we pay, but we get a lot of priorities in that country. That country's president, Emmanuel Macron, was instrumental in making sure that when the September 2022 attacks happened on Jermuk and on Sotk Nolat, that the European monitors got out there to Armenia. And that thing made a huge difference in terms of our security. So again, looking back, as someone who was a part of the process, I was part of that lobbying. I was part of trying to be politically active and and make a difference. We concentrated on a single issue for decades, on a single issue, which bore no tangible results. And I say this, and I
Which
know
was
that,
what was that
well,
issue?
you know what I'm going to say. Genocide recognition.
Mhm.
That was the issue. Single item voters, Armenians. Genocide recognition. That's why you would get Congress people or senators who would get up and they would say the word genocide, and Armenians would go crazy. And then,
Right.
as I became more politically mature, and I was like, don't insult me. Don't even use the word genocide, because there's nothing tangible there. Like, you say that, but we don't have recognition. We haven't connected that to any security issues vis-a-vis today's Armenia. And I'm not even going to talk about things like reparation. That's like la la land. That's completely
course,
unrealistic.
yeah.
But realistic things, right? Today's security. What are the lessons of genocide? And it was this open-ended campaign. Recognize. So what? So that we feel emotional gratification. Of course, it's important. As a grandson of a genocide survivor, emotional gratification is important, but it's far less important than security today.
So
Security
in
today.
that case, you don't think, for example, the $10 million that somebody like an Armenia Fund is raising every year, right?
Yeah.
Which, based on the $10 billion budget that Armenia has currently, that's a drop in the bucket, which, as you mentioned, is insignificant. Now,
I don't want to say I don't want to, because it's insulting to people who actually donate to Armenia Fund. I don't want to say it's insignificant. I'm saying it's far less significant.
yes, than if you had a $500 million budget. 10 million in comparison to $500 million versus 10 billion, obviously the ratio is, completely different. But if that $10 million that was being raised was being utilized for lobbyists, because the issue I think we have is we don't have a lobbyist group. ANCA is not a lobbyist group. ANCA, I don't even know what the heck they do. We've had them on the show. They couldn't tell us what they do. It's not like AIPAC, for what AIPAC is to Israel.
Far from it. Yeah.
We need something like that. And $10 million for lobbyists goes a long, long, long way versus what that $10 million can. Okay, you could rebuild a couple of roads or whatever, which, again,
brother, I'm not going to disagree with you,
right?
on any of this.
I don't think
absolutely.
Armenia needs that. Armenia can use that 10 million, because if we had that group here, the whole genocide thing, the whole record, whatever validation we need, whatever agenda we need to be pushed, that's the money that's going to get us there. Nothing else. Wearing a purple shirt April 24th, and Adam Schiff and whoever else wearing the purple shirt as if they're part of us. To me, I used to participate in all that when I was a kid, because I was part of, all these different Armenian groups. We went to the marches in Montebello and downtown, and I stopped doing it when I realized this is all nonsense. Nobody's paying attention except Armenians. All we're doing is driving, speeding on Glen Oaks with our Armenian flags, being actually now
nuisances.
Disruptive
versus productive.
Yeah.
But that money could be just utilized so much more effectively here. But who's going to help us do that, though?
See, before we even talk about what purpose the money is going to be spent for, and like I said, I'm not going to disagree with you. I welcome that idea, for example. But where's that money going to go? I mean, for what purpose, right? Again, if we're going to promote, I mean, about a year and a half ago, I was giving an interview, and someone said, what do you think about the Armenian government saying that genocide recognition is not a priority foreign relations issue for us? And I said, yeah, well, what's the question? Like, what are you questioning? Like, well, genocide recognition. I said, wait, we got the US to recognize the genocide, right? At this point, we got all the states. We have a couple of presidents who now use the word genocide. Now, like, I guess Trump isn't using it again. But the point is, and what? Like, what's the end game as far as genocide recognition? I'm telling you again, like, as an Armenian who has self-respect, I really resent any country's politician using that word or invoking the memory of our martyrs, the victims of the genocide, to garner their own votes, but really doing nothing substantive or tangible for us. And that has happened for decades. And in this country too. I'm saying, why don't we set more realistic targets that yield tangible results for us as a people?
Well, and you talked about security. That could be one, right?
Of course. To me, that would be number 1, 2, 3, and 4
Yeah.
on that
Absolutely.
list.
Yes.
On that list, because again, we're not just the people who lives in history. If we are people who live in the past, we're finished, man. We're done. Like, congrats to the Turks. They achieved their goal. The genocide was a huge success. Not only did they stop the existence of the Armenian people in the territory of their historical homeland, but we have stopped also being in the diaspora as a people living for anything meaningful as far as the people are concerned. But if we can think about our future as a people, right? We have to think about the present and the future, because we can't be stuck in the past. The past has to shape everything we do in the present and the future. Of course, we can't, if we're not learning lessons from the past, then again, we're bound for failure. But we do live today, and hopefully we will live tomorrow. And we need to worry about that. We need to concentrate on those realities. And I think this is the biggest dissonance between Armenia today and the diaspora. We live in these two very different parallel universes. In Armenia, increasingly, it's a very cold, calculated, non-emotional, folks, what do we need to do to survive the next 200 years? In diaspora, it's still like this rah-rah, like Medhogera. It's like, okay, bro, like Medhogera, okay. I want Mush and Sasun too, but only in theory, because even if I had Mush and Sasun, I wouldn't know what to do with it, because I'm not going to be able to convince the LA Armenians to get up and move there and live there. And if you have land and no one lives there, it's useless.
Well, we've actually offered people who are the whole rah-rah Armenia, we've said,
Move.
you want to go? No,
Go.
Zareh, we've told them, we said, listen, you want to go to Armenia? We'll buy you and your entire family a one-way ticket. We'll actually pay for a year of rent
It's
and
amazing.
a year of your expenses, but you can't come back in 10 years. You come back in 10 years, you owe us 10 times whatever we gave you.
Yeah.
They won't do it. What happened with that rah-rah Armenia?
Technology should move your business forward, not hold it back. At Titan Elite IT Services and Consulting, we make sure it does. Our clients don't wait days for help. They get real-time answers, fast resolutions, and dedicated support, both on-site and remote. From Los Angeles to Orange and Ventura counties, our coverage is local, statewide, and nationwide. When you need us, we're already on the way. We're not just an MSP. We build with you, from cloud migration to security to every endpoint in your network.
At Titan Elite, we don't just solve problems. We prevent them from happening. We become a part of your team and we grow with you.
Titan Elite IT Services and Consulting. Strategic, scalable, trusted, and always on.
Are you looking for a place to kick back and celebrate? Well, the Glen Arden Club has got you covered. Upstairs, you got a private lounge with a cigar room. Downstairs, you got the Moose Den, where you can have cocktails and private events. Hey, are you even hungry? They got an outside pizzeria serving one of the best pizzas in town. If you're interested in becoming a member with the Glen Arden Club or booking an event, contact the WiseNuts. We'll connect you to the boys at the Glen Arden, and you can become a member here or host your next gathering. I was speaking to somebody regarding the Christ statue that's being built in Albovian. Gagik Tsarukyan is the one behind the whole construction of it. And he was saying that, why are they building a Jesus statue? That money can be utilized for something else. And I told him, I said, listen, do you understand what impact that's going to do to tourism in Armenia? He says, well, there's tourists going to Armenia all the time. I said, I understand that. But now you have another sort of monument landmark being built in Albovian that's going to now it's going to take the people from Yerevan and say, hey, listen, there's another city about 15, 20 minutes away from Yerevan, and there's a beautiful Christ statue and monument there. Now it's going to bring people to Albovian. Again, people are going to spend money, and it's going to help the country generate wealth.
You know, I sort of had a different take on this statue for the longest time, and I thought it's like a gaudy concept, and we're copying the Brazilians, and a lot of people agree with me. But then I was I want to say in Spain or somewhere in Europe, and some foreigner from Latin America. I was having a conversation with it, and he said, "Oh, you're from Armenia. I am coming to Armenia next year." I said, "Oh, that's great." They're like, "Cool. Why did you choose? Why are you thinking of going to Armenia?" It's like, "You're putting Jesus' statue up. I'm coming to Armenia to see Jesus' statue." And I could not believe my ears. I completely sort of changed my mind. I was like, "Okay, all right, this may not be the worst idea on the planet.
It's not.
May actually be a working one." So I hear you.
Yeah,
I
we
hear you.
have to generate tourism. Look, in Yerevan, I saw Armenians, I saw Russians, I saw Iranians, I saw Arabs, I saw Turks, I saw Azeris. But at the end of the day, those people are there and they're spending money in that country. So you want to bring your dollars, you want to bring your rubies, you want to bring whatever the hell it is and spend it in Armenia, by all means.
But
We'll gladly
issue
take
is
it.
It's being spent only in Yerevan, though.
Yes. So that's why I was not against the statue.
That'll change as infrastructure, which may include things like the statue, comes about. For example, again, in last month I drove to Gyumri for various events 3 times, and I hadn't been to Gyumri in maybe 2 years, and I was shocked at the road. It took me an hour to get to Gyumri and back. It was amazing.
You used to take 4 hours.
Yeah, and it's like the nicest road ever.
Yeah.
And it's not just the road to Gyumri, like all the roads now, all the roads are amazing. So the infrastructure is finally being laid down. The government's spending a lot of money on this infrastructure, on the schools, on the kindergartens. And every time I get frustrated with something, I realize frustrated internally with the government or something that we're doing, I look and I say, we're literally starting not even from zero. We're starting from a minus point.
Well,
everything has to be done. You have to start.
Yeah. Speaking of the roads, the people who drive on those roads, I mean, it was night and day from what I saw in 2003, which was prior to the last time I was there, to 2025. I mean, people were stopping at red lights. The crosswalks, people were waiting for lights to change. Again, you had a few of the individuals who would still not abide by the rules, and it's a green light, but or a red light, and he's still kind of blowing through. But I was surprised as to how the driving had changed in Armenia drastically. So,
but again, that was a thing that frustrates me a lot, is the driving still, but. Like you said, the contrast is huge, and the part of that is the infrastructure. If you start having decent roads that actually have lanes delineated one from the other, of course it's conducive to better driving.
But you know what's the funniest thing though? The dogs in Armenia,
they stop at the red light.
They stopped at the red light too. That was so fascinating to me, because I remember I told you guys a story, right? Where I was on Pushkin. I was stopped waiting for the light to turn, or the hand signal to go away so I could walk. And I looked to my left, and there was a dog standing waiting with me. Yeah. And as soon as the walking symbol came up, the dog walked. And I was like, holy crap. I'm like, even the dogs in Armenia know.
Well, they have the green tags now. They're trained.
You know what? I was actually looking for, I didn't see those tags either.
The tags are supposed to be a sign of being neutered.
Is it neutered? Or I thought they're like vaccinated and all that stuff.
I think they've gone through the medical process, but by law they're supposed to be neutered.
But I mean, see, the country is developing, but part of the disconnect is, again, going back to the displacement of the Artsakh people, 120 or 150,000,
120,000,
yeah, and how they're being handled and kind of, I guess, repatronized in Armenia in a sense, right? Because there's a lot of, you can call it conspiracy, as far as Nikol Pashinyan was brought into office. He's the biggest real estate agent in Armenia to sell off the lands and whatnot. What's your response to all of that? Because, again, from a distance, it looks like we had a lot of innocent Armenian young soldiers, 5,000 plus, who were...
It's actually 3,860 something. The number. Yeah, so that's another thing. It's like a very typical thing. Our young people who died, like our brothers, our sons who sacrificed their lives for our homeland, are being rounded off to the next 1,000. It's so disturbing. And this is a persistent message that went out through the sort of the pro-Russian old regime media, and that number kept circulating and circulating just to make, because 3,800 isn't enough. 3,800, 4,000 is not enough. Let's make it 5,000, as if our men are some digits that some scumbags can play around with. So like every time I hear that number, I'm jarred by it. Every single soul, every additional soldier is a huge tragedy for us. So it's not 5,000, and God forbid it was 5,000. If you add all the casualties that we had probably after the ceasefire, the November 3rd, we're still up to like maybe 4,200, 4,300, but it's not 5,000.
Well, regardless, let's say 4,300.
Yeah, which is a huge number.
Which is
huge
4,300 more than it should have
Of
been,
course.
right? So how do you respond to that? The criticism of, well, why did he kill all these people if he knew he wasn't going to win the war? They were far more technologically advanced than we were. It was a completely different warfare they were fighting versus us. It's like we were there with, our ragatkek, our slingshots, and these guys came in drones and fighter jets and whatnot. I mean,
but the assumption there is that he knew that we were going to lose, but why do you assume that? I mean, he comes to power. First thing that happens when he comes to power, he's accused of being a traitor who's come to power to give up Artsakh. So the last thing he's going to do is give up Artsakh. First thing he does is gets his generals together, which he inherits from the old government, and says, how are we doing? What do we need? Will we be able to defend ourselves? And he's briefed by the professionals, the people who are in the know, who are in charge of Armenia's defense. And he's told this, that, and this. He's told that we're fine, although we need more weapons because we haven't really bought weapons in the last decade. And he says, okay, give me a list, a wish list of everything that you want to purchase, and I will find the money.
So essentially,
he's given a list. He says he approves everything on that list that the defense ministry and the joint chiefs of staff gives him. He approves the list. They start purchasing things. But the problem was much deeper than merely purchasing weapons. Or again, remember, when you purchase weapons, it's not like they get delivered a month.
It's not later. Amazon.
Yeah, it's a process. It takes a while, and especially if you're purchasing from a country that is in on it, they've cut their deals with Azerbaijan and Turkey. The deliveries don't necessarily take place when they have to, but like I said, the problem was not only the weapons, but it was the infrastructure, the defensive lines. For example, gentlemen, I invite you on your next trip to Armenia to come with me to the new defensive lines. I would love to take you to some of the fortresses in the south or in the north and the stuff that's being constructed. And if you've ever visited Artsakh, as I have on multiple occasions in 2016, 17, 18, and you've seen what those defensive lines used to look like, you'll be pleasantly shocked, again, as to what this government is doing. The huge, underground systems that are being built all along the line of contact. I mean, the money that's being spent on defense. But none of that existed. None of it existed. The officer corps was bad to the core, no pun intended, because they were stuck in the 90s. They hadn't received additional training. These were all old, fat men, out of shape, who were not only out of shape physically, but also out of shape intellectually to deal with modern warfare. And you had a defense minister who was a younger guy, but completely corrupt and completely out of touch with reality. He's in prison. And how do I know? I'll tell you an episode that happened between me and him. I had just been appointed. I was in defense ministry, and whatever the presentation they did, we had a conference and it was over. And I asked the defense minister, I said, I'm really worried about us getting attacked, not just from the east, from the Azeri side, sort of that front, but from Nakhchivan. So we get sandwiched, can we handle like a two-pronged assault from both sides? And his response to me was, don't worry about Nakhchivan. 2 hours, it'll take 2 hours for us to liberate Nakhchivan. I'm sitting there, I'm thinking like, wow, like there must be things I don't know about, because I knew that they had a major military, the Azeris had a major military presence in Nakhchivan, and there was a Turkish military presence in Nakhchivan. But I thought, wow, this the confidence with which he says it and the way he frames it, I must be misinformed. Well, imagine how the prime minister must have felt in 2018 when he was talking to the same people and they were telling him like, oh, we got this covered, all good, we're all good, just buy some weapons and we're good.
So, Zareh, would you consider the Velvet Revolution an actual Velvet Revolution, or would you consider it just the removal of one prime minister and the replacement with another?
So that's a very good question, and I have to say it's a revolution. I'll explain why it's a revolution and not merely a coup or like a displacement of one regime and replacement with another. Because the whole logic of the government has changed. With all of its numerous shortcomings, this government is doing things for the people. Main motivation is to improve the lives of the people. Medical services, healthcare services, education level, expanding the economy, really cracking down on corruption. There is corruption, no doubt. There will always be corruption, like there was corruption in the US, but it is nowhere near the scope and the depth of corruption that used to stifle Armenia's economy. That's why Armenia's economy, that 2.95 billion in 2018, 10 years ago was 2.5. So literally in 10 years, during Zareh Sinanyan, the national budget has grown by less than $500 million. And now in the last 6-7 years of war, COVID, instability, it has tripled. So, and that's a reflection of the fight against corruption as well. So fundamentally, the purpose of the government has changed. The purpose of the government is to serve its people. We can argue about how well it's doing it, how badly it's doing, carrying out its purpose. But certainly the purpose is there. Whereas you couldn't say that before 2018. The 2018, what was known as the government, meant to only do one thing: enrich a select number of people, select political groups that were in power.
The less than 1%.
The less than 1%.
What's the government doing as far as people's wages? Because one thing that we did notice was a lot of the people were saying that things are getting very expensive in Armenia and the wages aren't catching up quick enough. Is there something that the country is doing to help at least people survive just on a monthly basis with the wages?
So indeed, the inflation is there, and the life has become much more expensive in Armenia, undoubtedly. What the government is doing is it's increasing the wages of government employees, for example, most importantly, teachers. They introduced about 2 years ago a new certification process. So every teacher has to go through mandatory, it's like a
accreditation,
like a continuing education type of thing. And once you get accreditation, your salary, depending on how well you've done on your exam, and you can take this every year, your salary doubles, triples, quadruples. So if in 2018, the average teacher's salary was 100,000 dirhams, now you have teachers who are getting 1.5 million dirhams, depending on where they are in their career and how well they're doing on the accreditation. Same with the military. Our officer corps is now being compensated very well, because one thing that we noticed was that there's just absolutely no interest for young people to go into the military. Not because they were afraid, it's just you couldn't support your family. You're already engaging in a risky profession. If you're not being compensated for it, why would you become an officer? Why would you go get education somewhere in Greece or in France and then come back and not be able to sustain your wife and your children? So the salaries in the military have gone up drastically.
What about non-governmental positions, as far as maybe implementing? And look, I'm a big advocate for capitalism, but setting some sort of socialistic feature as far as minimum wage.
So there is, and there has always been minimum wage in Armenia. It's always been there.
And what is the minimum wage currently?
That's I I wish I knew that number. You can look it up, but the number is there, and it is minimum. I mean, it is minimum. If you look at that number and I look at that number, we're going to question whether someone can exist on that amount. But that number has gone up too. But like you said, in the capitalist system, it's hard for the government to interfere in the private sector. So what is the number? You want to cite it?
Okay, the minimum wage right now in Armenia as of 2025 is 75,000 dirhams.
I was going to say
a month.
70, so 75,000
Which is how many
less
dollars?
than $200. It's about
$193.
Yeah, $193.
That's not much for somebody to sustain some sort of living in Armenia, especially in the capital.
Yerevan. Exactly, in Yerevan, you can't sustain an existence because things are expensive. In the countryside, more so. But I agree with you. Well, it is minimum wage. It's poverty rate. I mean, it's sort of the lowest base mark for poverty.
We see with Armand, we were having a conversation when I came back, where my wife's aunt is a registered nurse in Armenia, and she makes roughly around $200 a month, and he was shocked about it. Doctors were making $500 to $1,000 a month.
Yeah, there's that. And it's always made me sort of question why healthcare professionals are compensated so little.
And these are professional people who dedicate years to becoming what they are.
Right. So now, as a result, what's happening, there's these private clinics are forming, and folks, you have the option of either using sort of the governmental route or doing privately with a doctor. But I agree with you that like healthcare professionals are underpaid in Armenia, and that at some level has to reflect in the quality of care that you end up getting, right?
What can we do to change that, though?
I mean, it's just a natural progression thing. For example, Armenia just 2 weeks ago introduced the national healthcare system. So universal healthcare for everyone, except that we can't handle to start providing universal healthcare to everyone now. So they started with the 65 and over age group, so the elderly.
So Medicare, basically.
Basically, Armenian Medicare, yeah. And it's a major thing. Like it's since the collapse of the Soviet Union, when technically there was universal healthcare. This is for the first time the state basically saying we're owning up to our responsibility to provide healthcare for everybody, and they're going to stage by stage add age groups. And do this gradually just to make sure that the system is up and running, because it is a big deal. Like, look at what happened with Obamacare and how many problems there were, and so on and so forth. And with a country like Armenia, which is not nearly as well funded as the US, obviously this is going to be quite a process. But the government is moving towards universal healthcare. Everyone has to be covered. Children under 18 are covered. They've always been covered.
Even now.
Even now. Yeah. So that's never part of the conversation. It's everyone above that.
But because look, every country needs investment, right? Armenia doesn't get foreign funding as much as some other more significant countries do, right? At least not from the US. So, and with prior administrations, it was tough for the diaspora to even consider investing into Armenia because, like you mentioned, corruption was far higher than it is now. So there was a lot of concern about, okay, I'm going to invest, $500,000, $5 million, build a hotel, build a manufacturing, whatever, and it could be taken away from me at any given point, which doesn't seem to be the case now, right? But let's say looking into the future over the next 10, 15 years, what are some sectors, some industries in Armenia that you see are going to flourish, where foreign investors would be interested in coming in and investing money, which will develop the Armenian economy, build the private sector versus the government sector, where the locals will have long-term jobs and retirement and whatnot. Well, what are some of those sectors that you see growing in Armenia, other than restaurants and cafes?
Of course, the services and tourism. Other than services and tourism, of course, the IT sector remains as prime candidate for this. And we just saw the latest success in terms of the Armenia being able to ride the AI wave. The Nvidia investment of $500 million in building an AI factory in Armenia. So that's like obviously any $500 million investment in Armenia is a major thing, but this is more significant because this is not just an investment. This is an investment in cutting edge technologies in Armenia by the biggest company in the world, which is Nvidia. So things like this. Oh, by the way, and when we were talking about how does the diaspora impact life in Armenia, I was saying like, the U.S. Armenians have made, they're making little impact. So in the sense that they're punching way below their weight level, their weight category. This is a great example to argue against what I said, because the Nvidia investment only came about because of several diaspora U.S. Armenians who were there at the right moment, at the right time. Rev Lebaridian from Nvidia, one of the vice presidents, Nubar Afeyan from
Moderna.
MIT, Moderna, and Razmikov Agimian. These guys, all folks from the US who made this happen.
For example, speaking of Nubar, right, from Moderna, what would it take for somebody like a Moderna to come into Armenia and build a biological plant which will manufacture some of their pharmaceuticals?
Obviously, Nubar Afeyan would be much better positioned to answer this question, but from my conversations with him, you need to have a modicum of sort of an ecosystem that can support something like that. For example, the Nvidia thing's coming to Armenia because it's not coming into a vacuum. It's coming to a country which has a pretty sophisticated IT industry. I mean, that's something we have. And they're coming into an existing infrastructure, an existing ecosystem. So they're not going to be like people, they're not going to be in the wilderness. For something like biotech, right? You talk about Moderna. For biotech to make a major investment in Armenia, again, you have to have the stepping stones. You have to have the basic framework laid out already.
Wouldn't geographical location be one of the selling factors there, though?
For biotech?
Of course.
How so?
So you're selling pharmaceuticals, right? Armenia, I would consider central hub of the Middle East, Europe, Asia. So being able to manufacture drugs there or pharmaceuticals there and to distribute to Europe, Asia, Africa, the Middle East, you're 2 hours, 3 hours away from your next major country.
So no, that's a great point if your goal is to manufacture and sell. But I was thinking more like an R&D center, a place where biotech takes place.
I'm trying to figure out a way to basically generate more income to the country.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they both do, but I think even with your model, you need the people who can work there. They need to have some knowledge. That area of science has to be developed. There have to be a critical mass of specialists.
I don't want to doubt our people. I think our people
I don't doubt the genius of our people. Our people are capable of the best things if you put them in the right environment. All I'm saying is that, have they been put in the right environment? I mean, are the Armenian universities churning out biotech specialists? I kind of doubt it right now. So you have to lay down some foundational framework before you can be ambitious and expect a serious outfit to come in.
Yeah.
Some doctors treat pain, others help you understand it. Dr. Rafi Garegian has dedicated his career to helping people live stronger, healthier, and more aware of their bodies. His approach goes beyond quick fixes. It's about rebuilding movement, discipline, and mindset. A true professional who's changing the way people think about health and recovery. Presented by the WiseNuts podcast, highlighting leaders who make a difference.
When you're involved in an accident, choosing the right attorney is the most important decision you can make. Let us show you why we're different at Megredichian Law. With 11 attorneys on our team, we're able to go to trial and fight for your case. More important, the pedigree of our firm is customer service, so you always get a call, you always get an update. Lastly, we're results driven. We win. Let us show you how. Call us at 818-530-1300 or bestcaraccidentattorney.com.
As far as kind of dabbling into the education system in Armenia, you and your family obviously moved in 2019 with your children. What is the education system like in Armenia? Are your kids going to end up going to universities there, or are they going to be coming to universities in the United States?
Obviously an issue that we're all concerned about, the education, the future of our children. And this is a sort of a loaded question because Armenia has a pretty good primary education system. So if you want your kids to go to a decent school, like high school level right now, and get a pretty decent education, Armenia is not a bad place. I mean, you will get, if you choose to send them to some of these elite schools, even better. But the average, at least in Yerevan, the average public school primary education is pretty good. But that changes when it comes to the universities. Again, the universities, if in the 1980s they were up to par in terms of their quality for that level, right? For Soviet university, they were basically producing competitive professionals, people who could be out there any part of the world and actually compete. Well, in the last 30 years, that whole thing just degraded. The higher education system really degraded. It really went down quality wise. And if you look at any one of these indexes, like the Hong Kong index, the US News and World Report, any of these indexes, good luck finding any of Armenia's universities on those lists. I don't mean like the top 100. I mean the top 5,000.
Oh, geez, that bad.
That bad. Which is a big problem, and the government is tackling it. So government is engaged in this major long-term educational reform process. And one of the things that the government is proposing also as far as the infrastructure for universities is this academic city concept. I don't know if you've heard about that.
No.
That gets a lot of press, good press, bad press. But the idea is that, look, we're going to build an entire university city on the Ashtarak Highway. It's right by, you guys know that they're like by Vahagni and
Okay.
Yeah.
So an entire city called the academic city, where all the universities have to move to, and they'll have their campuses, and you'll create your separate educational ecosystem. So it'll be a thing. I think it's like one step. It's not necessarily the answer to all the problems, because we were talking right before we started recording about these endowments that the American universities have, right? I mean, money makes a difference. I mean, if you can hire the best professors, if you can bring the best researchers, if you can produce the best research in your universities, well, obviously you're going to be up there, and the quality of the education that you provide to your students is going to be very high. Well, all of that needs to happen in Armenia. So money, you can't have good education if you're not funding your universities well.
So you could agree that there's still a lot of people hoping or even sending their children to others.
One of them guilty as charged. My daughter's in the Netherlands, going to college in Amsterdam, and I honestly did not consider any one of the universities in Armenia for that reason, because I'm sorry, she's a smart girl and she has a bright future, and I wanted her to go to a good college.
Which you can't be blamed for that.
How difficult would it be to bring one or two or however many of those universities to open up like a satellite campus in Armenia?
It actually can be done with some major commitment and major effort and some money behind it. And something like that just happened in Gyumri. I'll tell you, there is a college university in Lausanne, Switzerland, called EHL, École Hospitalité de Lausanne, something like that. I'm not I don't speak French, but I'm pretty close.
The accent is there.
Yeah, it's the Hospitality College of Lausanne. It is the number one hospitality sort of comprehensive university in the world. In the world. I don't mean like in Europe. I don't mean in Switzerland. In the world. It is the place where you go to get the best education of in anything having to do with hospitality. So think of hospitality very broadly. So because of some influential and very committed Swiss Armenians, headed by a great man, benefactor named Vahe Gabrash, EHL just opened its first ever outside of Switzerland subsidiary college in Gyumri. They started with the vocation school. So we did the grand opening about a month ago. They started with the vocation school. And if things go as planned, a year from now, 4 years, 5 years from now, they will start expanding the scope of the university. So you may end up with an EHL in Armenia, which would be really transformational, because I can see how everyone from the region, not just Armenia, everyone from the region would come to go to college at EHL, especially if it's going to be, a quarter of the living expenses that they would have to pay in Lausanne. And then, of course, the tuition will be accordingly low. So it is possible, but someone has to own that issue. There has to be money behind it, political influence behind it. No, like, again, tangible results.
I mean, look, we've got a lot of Armenians in some of these top universities, from the Stanfords, MITs, Harvards. These days, the diasporan Armenians are graduating, and they do have significant roles in,
no doubt,
the Cal State, the one,
Cal State LA, Cal State Northridge,
the JPL program one with the
Caltech.
Caltech, yes, that's the one. So we have a lot of students and professors in these universities and the law schools and whatnot. So I think to plant that seed, to be able to, because it's going to be very challenging by the time let's say you build a university, that campus, which is, I think, a great idea. I'd heard of it from somebody. I forget if it was Ed or who told me about it, but that's fantastic. But at the end of the day, everything is about branding, right? Mm-hmm. People from, let's say, that's great for some of the locals, but then you also want foreigners to flock into these universities, right? And in order to do so, it's going to take time for that university to climb up the rankings and it could take 10, 15, 20, 30 years.
Build a reputation, basically.
Yeah, whereas you put a MIT logo on there, UCLA logo, whatever you put on there, day one, you've got credibility. And people from all over Europe will be like, because I remember when I used to work as an insurance agent at AAA, majority of my clients who came from Caltech, the university students, almost 90+% were Europeans. I didn't have single white American students from Caltech that were my insurance clients. Mm-hmm. Everybody that had a cheap car, liability insurance only. I remember it was like $300
just
a year.
AAA.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Branding has a lot to do with it. It's a massive, massive factor.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a worthwhile cause. We also have to remember that there are, there's the American University of Armenia, AUA, and that university needs to be revamped and propped up, because it doesn't bat nearly at its category. I mean, it's like it's inexplicable. A college that was opened with a lot of pomp in the early 90s, and was sort of the first real American presence in Armenia. It's not where it should be.
I had a conversation with Edgar, who's our co-host, who moved to Armenia. He's there permanently now. And I asked him, I said, okay, so, your daughters they're going to go through middle school, they're going to go through high school, they're going to graduate. What if they want to come back to the States for university? No. AUA is a great university. Mm-hmm. I go, is it? He goes, yeah, it is. It's, it's a top ranked school. I'm like, but based on what? Based on who? I mean, it's unfortunate you say this, but the sad reality is, the universities outside of Armenia are doing much, much better. And again, in Europe as well. You said your daughter goes to the Netherlands, right? So, I mean, it speaks for itself at this point.
No, but it's a matter of national security for us to have a viable higher education system, because masses aren't going to go okay, let's say 10%, let's say 20% of students end up going to colleges outside of Armenia. 80% of them, one way or another, are going to remain. They're going to go to colleges in Armenia. And we want them to remain. We want them to go to colleges. So we want them to get the best education, get the most analytical, critical thinking, type of mentality once they exit college, which is the exact opposite of what Armenian universities teach and have been teaching for the last 30, 40 years. It's like very sort of karakusi, like you have to stay in the boundaries, don't question things, I mean, how do you survive in the 21st century with that kind of mentality?
The one thing we want to hope and wish for is if the children do leave to a foreign country,
They come back. Yeah.
Bring that knowledge back to Armenia. Yeah. But kind of dabbling into foreign affairs and national security. After obviously the Artsakh War that took place in 2020, we still currently have hostages in Baku. What is the country of Armenia doing to get those hostages released? Because it's now been close to, it's over 5 years now that those people have been held hostage in Baku.
Right. So most of the people who are in Baku are actually from 2023. So from Artsakh they were, but some of them are. But it's the folks that were captured when Armenians were exiting Artsakh. So, but that doesn't change the issue. The issue is a legitimate one. The Armenian government, in its negotiations with the Azeri side, have this as one of their top priority items at every negotiation, all the time. Now, I know that you may ask, or the listeners may ask, well, they say, well, you signed these August 8th protocols in Washington, D.C., the trip and those protocols, and they don't mention the prisoners. They don't mention you call them hostages, prisoners. We know who we're talking about. They don't. You're right. And people say, well, that proves that this is not a priority for you and you don't care and you're not negotiating for their release and you've abandoned them. I assure you that is not the case. The reason those agreements don't have a mention of the prisoners is because this is the best deal that we could get at that moment under the circumstances. And we had to decide, are we sacrificing potential security in the near future, which is in the form of these agreements and hopefully develops into something much more meaningful, or do we say no, we're not gonna agree unless the prisoners issue is included in this document? And we made the choice. We chose security and to continue negotiating about the prisoners separately.
Was it due to not having leverage at all?
Yeah, of course. I mean, everything's a matter of leverage. We are where we are. We have what we have. Azerbaijan had a very serious and very specific plan to attack Armenia in April of this year.
Of this year?
Yeah, April of 2025. They were gearing up to attack Armenia.
Proper Armenia. Or Armenia
Syunik,
proper?
Syunik, to be specific. And that was averted because of our friends outside of Armenia, and we have to give credit to the Trump administration in that as well. And this is, again, people in the diaspora don't understand this reality. I keep saying, like, everywhere I go, look, when you do this rah-rah, like you maximalist, you always want everything. You don't understand that when we wake up in Yerevan, like every morning, we are 40 kilometers from the border of Turkey. And we're, if Nakhchivan is Azerbaijan, which it is, we are like, another 40 kilometers from Azeri border.
Yeah, that's the one thing.
That's just the reality that you don't have to deal with. You wake up, you're like, oh, I'm a patriot. I'm going to get on Facebook and write some nasty comment about Armenia's government.
Yeah.
I'm such a great patriot. Sure, and I hate the Turks and I hate the Azeris. They say these things like, yeah, but you realize you live in the most secure country on the planet, and you've put an ocean between yourself and Turkey, and a couple of continents between yourself and Turkey, and you're very patriotic and very brave over here. Guess what? We wake up every morning, and we have Turkey on one side, we have Azerbaijan on the other side, and that is a reality that we cannot escape. We can't escape that. And our decisions as responsible people who care for the longevity of the Republic of Armenia as the only place where Armenian people can survive in the long term as Armenians, we make the rational and hard and cruel choices that we have to make. And if in your eyes that makes you a patriot and us traitors, my friend, you have a very skewed perception of reality.
Yeah. I couldn't. I mean, could you live in Armenia?
No, I haven't been there long enough to know that for certain, but based on what I know today, no, because I would last time I was there was 3 summers ago, and then prior to that was in '92 when I went back. So I've only been there twice since I moved here.
Yeah, it's an unfair question to ask of someone who doesn't really know the place. I would recommend every Armenian live in Armenia, knowing that's utterly unrealistic, and saying that it's unfair to even suggest that. But as an Armenian who has lived most of his life in the US and had a pretty good life in the US, I would highly recommend as many Armenians as possible choose to live in their historical homeland. It'll be different. It won't be the way that you're used to, but it's a pretty good life. It's a good life, and one thing is, one aspect of your life will be such that you can't have anywhere else, which is you will be in your own historical homeland. You'll be unapologetically Armenian. No one will be mispronouncing your name, where you have to like somehow explain why your name is Ottoman or Zareh or Sahak. I mean, that's the place where you will not worry about your children. Will they be Armenian? Will they not be Armenian? What if they intermarry? Like, what if they intermarry? If they're intermarrying and they're living in Armenia, more power to them. Good for them. Because, well, I guess we're expanding the family at that point. But because in Armenia, you don't fear, what are you fearing? What, assimilation? The person who's intermarrying is going to be the one assimilating, not the other way
But
around.
for you and your family, because that you made a very, like you said, you got a very good life here, and 4 kids, to move 4 kids plus convince your wife to move back to Armenia I would assume, was very challenging. And on top of that, you've taken a government role, um, governmental position, right? So for you and your family, the vision that you had and the as far as the objective, okay, we're going to go to Armenia, move there permanently for X, Y, and Z reasons. Have you been able to accomplish that objective? And is it what you presumed it would be for you and for your family?
All things considered, yes. I mean, look, the fact that my wife and my kids were able to acculturate and assimilate so quickly. There were no like major stress events associated with the move. My daughter and my son were pretty old. They had friends. They had a lot of friends. They were literally leaving their entire
They were young
ecosystem.
teenagers. At
Yeah,
the
yeah,
time.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then they were leaving and going to a place where they didn't.
How old was your oldest?
So I would have been 15.
And your
15
youngest?
and a half. And the youngest, let's do the math. They would have been
-6.
Yeah, they would have been like 8 or 9, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. I think for the 8-year-old, I think it might have been the easiest. I'm
Yeah, the
assuming.
8-year-olds, the twins. So the 8-year-olds, they like not a problem whatsoever. But again, I don't know if I can say this, but I know it. We're having a conversation. My youngest, one of the twins, so the oldest twin, the older twin, got into a fist fight for the first time in his life, apparently like a week ago, while I was in Moldova, and they've had problems like with the operos and sort of learning how to get along with sort of the Hayastansis and stuff, and
to adapt. Let's call it that.
To adapt, which is normal. I mean, look, I moved here, and I got into a bunch of fights because I didn't understand what people were saying to me. So my son got into his first fist fight, and that's 4.5 years into his move to Armenia, because they moved a year and a half after me. So that's almost 5 years after his move to Armenia. He got into his first fist fight. I'm not condoning fist fights. I'm just saying it's part of life. Boys, these things happen. So it hasn't been bad. It's their life is pretty good, and we live in a place where they've stopped thinking in English. So that when they form their sentences, they're no longer English sentences with Armenian words. They're actually Armenian sentences with Armenian words, and they travel. We're close to Europe. We're close to Asia.
Kind of goes back to
yeah.
my whole
Right.
analogy as far as how close we are to everything. What language did you guys speak at home when you were in the States?
So when we were in the US, we insisted on speaking Armenian at home, and that was a big bone of contention. It was like a struggle, constantly struggling against these kids or with these kids. Now in Armenia, we speak English, and that's very intentional because we want them to be as fluent and as conversant in English as possible.
Is there a struggle with the language now as far as barriers with Armenian to English to Armenian?
Oh no! Because
are they speaking Armenian and English?
No. There's so much availability of English. I mean, the internet has created a virtual reality of its own. So if you choose to be in an English virtual reality, it's at the tip of your finger. So fingertips. So that's their reality. They're in school. They're with Armenian friends and their ayastansis, and when they're home, they choose to be very American and engage with American culture and American speech and everything. It's there.
But they do go to an Armenian school, though. It's not an English school.
They go to a private school called Shirakatsi Cemaran, which has a huge repat contingent. So folks from the US, from France, from Canada, from Australia, from Russia, a lot of parents from the outside send their kids to Shirakatsi. And the reason they do that is because Shirakatsi has, what do they call them? They're like acculturation classes. When you first move and you don't speak the language well enough, they will actually isolate you and start working on your Armenian skills. Until it's like ESL, right? But it's not ESL. They call it something else now. It's not ESL.
It's
English as a second language. So this is Armenian as a second language.
ASL.
Yeah. So ASL in our, they have this thing where you can put your kids in that program, and your kids gradually sort of merge into general population.
It's ELD. It's English language development.
That's what it is. When we were kids,
politically
it was ESL.
correct. Yeah.
Interesting.
When you're involved in an accident, choosing the right attorney is the most important decision you can make. Let us show you why we're different at Megradichian Law. With 11 attorneys on our team, we're able to go to trial and fight for your case. More important, the pedigree of our firm is customer service, so you always get a call, you always get an update. Lastly, we're results driven. We win. Let us show you how. Call us at 818-530-1300 or bestcaraccidentattorney.com.
Some doctors treat pain, others help you understand it. Dr. Rafi Guregian has dedicated his career to helping people live stronger, healthier, and more aware of their bodies. His approach goes beyond quick fixes. It's about rebuilding movement, discipline, and mindset. A true professional who's changing the way people think about health and recovery. Presented by the WiseNuts podcast, highlighting leaders who make a difference.
Technology should move your business forward, not hold it back. At Titan Elite IT Services and Consulting, we make sure it does. Our clients don't wait days for help. They get real-time answers, fast resolutions, and dedicated support, both on-site and remote. From Los Angeles to Orange and Ventura counties, our coverage is local, statewide, and nationwide. When you need us, we're already on the way. We're not just an MSP. We build with you, from cloud migration to security, to every endpoint in your network.
At Titan Elite, we don't just solve problems. We prevent them from happening. We become a part of your team and we grow with you.
Titan Elite IT Services and Consulting. Strategic, scalable, trusted, and always on.
As we mentioned, I was in Armenia and we did 2 interviews. We did an interview with Hampik Sasunyan, and then we did an interview with Talar Honcharian. Talar Honcharian is a Canadian Armenian.
Is this the tatted up girl?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Right.
So we sat down with her, and Zareh, you have no idea. I mean, what we went through for a week, bro.
Backlash.
The backlash.
Oh come on.
Yeah.
So people have to just, oh my goodness.
Are you ready for this story? So
Yeah.
we interviewed Hampik Sasunyan. Hampik Sasunyan obviously is a hero in our eyes. Again, I don't know how would you consider him, but we interviewed him. It went on. We hit roughly about 15,000 views in a matter of 2 hours, 3 hours.
This is with Hampik.
Hampik.
Yeah.
And we pulled the episode due to safety reasons. And we put a picture of me and Edgar, who was our previous co-host in Armenia. We kind of rekindled the relationship there in Armenia. And we put a picture of us with Talar, in a full hijab. And all of a sudden, everybody's...
Well, hold on. Don't forget the fact that you put our theme song.
Okay, put our theme song. Our theme song basically says they try to divide us.
Exactly.
I get it. But whatever. I put up the picture with Talar and we get like insane backlash comments to the point.
Is it just literally insanity where it's like psycho, like how dare you?
Yeah. You guys aren't Armenians. You guys are traitors.
So it's not objective. It's not like intellectual. No. It's like, oh, let's think about these things. So
we started getting, mind you, I'm in Armenia while this is taking place. Yeah. And then we get messages, DMs, and then we get phone calls. Some dude calls us from Europe and says, take that episode down right now. I said, I said, oh, you want us to take down the episode? I go, sure. Send me the link so I can take it down. I'm like, did you watch it? He goes, no, I didn't watch it. I'm like, so what do you want me to take down? He goes, no, take the episode down. I'm like, bro, there's no episode up. It's clearly in the goddamn description, caption. It says airing next Wednesday. So it's not up. How dare you sit down with somebody? Did you ask the archbishop for permission before you sat down with the Muslim? I said, listen, brother, I know you're from Europe. Yeah, I know you guys are living in a very socialistic, non-freedom of speech country. But where we come from, I could sit down with whoever the hell I want to. And we have the right to interview whoever the hell we want to, whenever we want to. You guys aren't allowed to. I said, says who? Says who? So some moron online posts, this is factual. Like, this is online. He takes a screenshot of me from my personal page and he posts it and he puts this massive dialogue on there. Yeah. And he says that the WiseNuts intentionally sent Edgar to Armenia a year ago and waited a year. And then Arno went to Armenia as Joseph and Armand stayed in America for damage control to interview Hampik Sasunyan and pull the episode to get 15,000+ views in a couple of hours, and then push Talar's episode to create Sharia law and build a Quran in Armenia because Aliyev
he told you probably.
Has paid
you. Yeah.
You see how much power and influence we have?
You guys are amazing.
I was telling Armand, I was like, bro, sorry, excuse me for my French. I was like, where's our fucking check?
Yeah.
We can't even, introduce a new rule in the house. We're going to introduce Sharia law in Armenia.
I can't get a permit for a barbecue in the city of Glendale. Seriously. You're telling me Aliyev is going to pay me money to go to Armenia?
You know, this without even having seen the episode, and I'm curious. I'd love to see it and to see if the conversation is, is it spiritual? Is it about us being Armenians? So I look forward to it.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you.
But this issue also, we're saying like all these things that they're so commonsensical, but they turn it into such a controversy. Like, look, I'm going to say something that's going to be very controversial now. For 1,000 years, a certain foreign people came onto our land from Altai, from Mongolia, from Gobi Desert. And they conquered our land. And in the last 1,000 years, since they entered Vaspurakan and then made their way up to Ararat Valley, took Ani, and then defeated the Byzantines, and then ultimately 500 years later ended up taking Constantinople. In the 1,000 years, they have systematically absorbed our people. And they've absorbed our people by converting them to Islam. And interestingly enough, the conversion to Islam of, I assume, hundreds of thousands of Armenian people over time has translated to those people no longer being Armenian. And I ask the question, was that a victory for us that Armenian historical homeland, the Armenian highlands, is now populated by tens of millions of people who call themselves Turks. They call themselves Kurds. But a simple genetic test will reveal that they are all Armenian. Have we won? Has ostracizing these people and not finding a way of cohabitating with our own brethren, our own brothers and sisters, has that been a victory for us or a loss? I ask that question. I'm sorry if I try to be rational and ask that question, because anyone who's going to turn around and say, like, no, our church is what makes us Armenian. So they're saying that before Christianity, the Armenian nation didn't exist. Is that what they're saying? Are they saying that our religion and our language, our religion and our nationality is one and the same? Is that what they're saying? Because I'll tell you, like, for example, for the Armenian Apostolic Church, and I've heard this from, I don't even mention this guy's name, a guy who's currently occupying the top seat in the Armenian Apostolic Church, has told me that the Armenian evangelicals, Armenian Protestants are heretics. I mean, is that victory? Is this how we find ourselves after 4,000 years of written, recorded history, being a people in a small piece of our historical homeland with a small population barely hanging on? You know, there are many people, there are the Kurdish people, they converted to Islam and they didn't become Turks. They stayed Kurdish. The Albanian people, the Albanians in Europe, right? They're 70% or so Muslim, 30% Christian. So at some point, the Albanians, who of all the European people probably put up the biggest fight against the Turks and the Ottomans, at some point started converting to Islam. But you know what? They converted to Islam and they stayed Albanian.
Yeah.
That's victory. These people became Muslims, but they're Albanian first. And I look at those examples and I question our past. Have we chosen the winning strategy? Is ostracizing our own people because due to circumstances or because of personal choices, they choose to go another way in terms of religion, ostracizing them, branding them, cutting them off. Has that led to good results for us? I don't know. I think anybody who looks at the map will come to the right conclusion.
Look, separating state from church is very, very important, because church is your faith, what you believe in, your morals, your values, your principles. But your identity is Armenian.
Of course.
You have to identify as an Armenian and uphold your values, your morals, your principles through religion. I mean, I want to say they play hand in hand, but they don't play hand in hand, but they do play hand in hand. It's kind of like a double-edged sword.
Sure.
But I agree with you. Your identity is very important. The Albanians, as you mentioned, Georgians, as you've mentioned, the Kurdish, as you mentioned, those people's identities were much more important than their religion.
Yeah.
Not to bash religion at all. I am a man of faith, but at the end of the day, your identity as far as politics is concerned, you can't get the religious aspect involved in it, because if you get religion involved in politics, look what's been happening.
But how do we, as Armenians, identify ourselves, especially to foreigners? We're the first Christian nation.
No, you can't play that
we're
card.
Not. But we're not. That's, first of all, why do we keep repeating that fallacy?
No, we are. 301 AD, we identify.
We are the first nation
to
accept
adopt Christianity
as a state. Those are two different things. The first Christian nation are the Palestinian Jews who converted, who agreed that Jesus Christ was the Messiah and followed him and became the first Christians. Those are the first Christian people. And then after them, the Syrian people, the Syrian Christians were the first Christians. The Assyrians were the first Christians. The Egyptians became Christians, started becoming Christians before we did. And then in the 3rd, 4th century, we started becoming Christians.
Yeah.
I mean,
301 AD, the story of Dertat and Grigorul Savoric, or Gregory the Illuminator, is the story of the Armenian nation adapting Christianity as a whole. That's what it is.
State religion.
But
exactly.
I think you're right. The terminology or the wording that people say the Armenians were the first ever Christians, that is not. It's not true.
I don't think they
say
say first Christians. They say Christian nation,
but
meaning the first country to adapt Christianity as a state.
Well, that you're saying two different things.
But those are two different things. A nation and a state are two different things.
So you're saying
Because you can be a nation without a state. But we were people with a state. It was a state. It was a political decision to become Christian.
Because you're referring to nation as a nationality.
Of course.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this thing, I haven't even seen the interview, but I'm fascinated. I'm probably going to disagree with a lot of things she says because I'm a product of my Christian sort of background, and I'm product of Christian civilization. But I will not judge her. I will not judge this person. Whatever circumstances led her to embrace another religion, it happened. And the last thing I would want to do is to say, well, now that you've sort of we part ways. Bye. I don't want to deal with you. Like, why?
No. We ended on very good terms as well.
Of course, good for you.
The last thing that I did mention to her, I said, I truly do hope you find Christ.
Yeah, there you go.
That's it.
Well, I hope anyone who's not Christian finds Christ. You know what I mean? Like,
that was it. But as far as what's going on in Armenia with the church, can you dab a little bit on that?
Sure.
As kind of one of our last topics before we call it.
I'll try to do this as succinctly as possible. Look, we have a church hierarchy. We have a church, and then we have a church hierarchy. These are two different things, right? The church is an institution that has been with us and is not person-oriented. So these priests, which are the hierarchy, or whatever their status is, bishop, archbishop, catholicos, they come and they go. The church stays. The church is the people. A church is not a building. A church is not an official. The church are the congregation. It's us. It's the Armenian apostolic believers. Those of us who follow the church are the church. Those of us who follow our version of Christianity, to be specific, are the church. Now, from time to time, our church is dominated by some bad people, nefarious officials. It has happened in the history numerous times. We've had Catholicos who literally betrayed Armenian nation. We have Catholicos who literally opened the gates of Ani in front of the Byzantines. We've had Catholicos who have been defrocked. I mean, this has happened. Bad people come, and sometimes people resolve that issue by removing these people. Sometimes they fail, and these people turn us over to our enemies. Well, now, and this is, you can say this is my opinion, but look, my opinion wouldn't matter if I didn't have the support of the Armenian population, and if the government didn't have the support of the Armenian population. There is a church hierarchy with a guy who is called Catholicos, who has no connection to the Armenian people. He's been missing in action, in the hardest of our days, missing in action, following dictates from foreign governments. I mean, Russia, obviously.
Yeah.
Corrupt. And has broken every oath that he has given to God, including the oath of celibacy. And that is a fact. It's a fact that has been put in front of him, and the government has challenged him, said, deny it if you can. Deny it.
Well, this is factual.
Of course, he's not denying it because he can't deny it because people know who his children are and where they are, where they work, their name, the last name. I don't know. Our society is a small society. We all know each other. And he surrounded himself by these semi-criminal, sycophant archbishops, one of them named Artsakh War, whose pornographic videos somehow surfaced and were widely circulated in the internet. Archbishop, who is the chief of staff of the Catholicos.
Is he supposed to be celibate as well?
Well, he's an archbishop. Of course he is.
No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, of course he is. He's supposed to be celibate. And by the way, he gave an interview yesterday in which he said, you want to defrock me? You realize if you defrock me, I will be free to engage in this kind of activity even more.
Oh, so he's doubling down.
He's doubling down. It's like, dude, be defrocked, become a layperson, engage in all kinds of salacious activities, so long as you don't wear the clothes of an Armenian churchman and you don't claim to have spiritual authority and dominance over us. Go. And anyway, so it all goes back, of course, to the supreme leader, the guy who is now usurping the seat of Grigor Lusavoric, the guy whose worldly name is Katrich Nersisyan. And he has no support in Armenian society. You know what? In fact, he has no support in diaspora. He used to, But he doesn't. Even the people who are opposed to this popular effort in Armenia to cleanse the church and make it healthy, when you talk to them, they don't make the argument that no, he's a holy man, he's a good church leader, he's a good father to our people. No one says that. They're like, yeah, we know he's a sleazebag. We know he's dirty, but we're hurting the church. No, we're not hurting the church. We're trying to cure the church. An organism, when it has a disease, the right thing is to remove the disease. You want to cure the disease. You don't pretend that it's not there and allow the disease to kill the body, And in the diaspora, that's like a very, again, because they don't live in that reality. They're like, but it's okay. It's like too much unpleasantness. Like, don't touch the church.
See, this is where we get lost with faith.
Yeah, exactly.
Our faith is our morals, our values, our principles.
Of course.
But if you don't have those, you can't sit there and say, well, yeah, we know he's a scum. Well, if he's a scumbag, then
what's his role?
Then
Exactly.
you remove the scum and you bring in what you believe in. Or do you believe in that? Do you have the morals? Do you have the values? Do you have the principles yourself? If you don't, that means you're as scum as that individual is.
Of course, and you are just another human being who has been bestowed upon the responsibility and the privilege of leading people on a moral, spiritual level. So you're supposed to be like the example that they follow. What kind of an example are you for the lay people who are sinners? We are sinners. We're allowed to be sinners. I mean, we try not to be, right? But we can't make our sins a virtue and then turn around to people and say, like, what I'm doing is okay. There's, it's okay, but I will be your leader. Well, why would anyone follow a leader like that?
I think majority of the pushback also came from the fact that it was, they were being publicly arrested. And
why are they being arrested, right? Who's in jail?
But let me add to that. The concern was how that's going to be perceived on a global level, right? From other countries, not just Armenian diasporans. It was more so about how is this being perceived? Why is the Armenian government going after the church?
I'll tell you, no one on the global level has a problem with it. Of course, they're trying to make it a problem. Why do you think a Russian oligarch who's now in jail, his nephew comes to the US, doesn't even speak decent English, pays Tucker Carlson $400,000 cash to get on Tucker Carlson's show and talk about the Armenian Church and this Russian oligarch who is in jail in Armenia? You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not an issue. They're trying to make it an issue.
Was it true that he paid Tucker Carlson that much money?
Well,
it's allegedly.
Tucker Carlson would never take that interview. Tucker Carlson has no interest in that subject matter. It is not within the scope of the things that he talks about.
But Tucker Carlson has been speaking to a lot. Like, for example, he had Anna Kasparian on. He's been dabbling into a lot of Armenian topics and Armenian, I would say, politics recently because of his faith as well.
Let's put it this way. 2 weeks ago, we had the first ever Armenian National Prayer Breakfast. And the night before the prayer breakfast was a sort of a gala dinner for the guests of the breakfast. And a lot of people from the American evangelical establishment were there. And this was a topic of conversation between me and them. And they said, oh, yeah, look, Tucker took $400,000 for this. I mean, that's what they're saying, right? And I'm sure we look at declarations that Tucker is going to file, whatever, and it's going to show that he took that money. So,
I mean, only time will tell at this point.
Only time will tell, but there's no way. There's no way. I'm willing to place a friendly bet with you, gentlemen, right now that is what happened.
That there was actual money involved, money
of course.
exchange.
And there's no crime in that. The question is not that it's somehow criminal. The question is why? Like, what's your motivation of coming to a conservative American influencer's a serious person? Like Tucker is a very influential person in the US. And now that Armenia is actually making headway with sort of the conservative American side with the trip project and everything, why is this man here lobbying whom? For what? For his uncle to be released? His uncle is a Russian billionaire. He's a citizen of Russian Federation. He should be going and lobbying there. Why is he lobbying in the US? Very weird. But it's not weird. It all makes sense, actually. As far as the archbishops, and I'm running out of time, the archbishops were arrested for very specific reasons. One of them led an illegal month of demonstrations during which he multiple times called for the violent overthrow of the government. Then the recordings came out. Our National Security Service recorded him saying that we need to kill a few people, 5 here, 5 there, create a lot of chaos, and then we'll take over this government. I mean, that's why he's in jail, Galstanyan, who, by the way, christened all my kids because he used to be the archbishop in Canada. The other one, Azerbaijan, was a guy who called for a violent overthrow of the government and publicly kept saying, I called Serge Sargsyan's generals and I said, what kind of generals are you? Can't you mobilize the army and just finish with this government? Just overthrow it, get rid of these people. And he does this publicly. He did it once, he did it twice. Now he's convicted of incitement of violence and of violent overthrow of the government. And he's been sentenced 2.5 years in jail. So what's the problem? Why would these people be treated any differently than any other insurrectionist who tries to incite violence against the Armenian state? And by God, it is a state. It is finally becoming a state. It's finally starting to react and actually hold people responsible for their actions.
Are these people not making the money they were making 6 years ago?
I think the people behind them aren't. And so they're the ones feeding this. I mean, the players behind this are all the same, right?
So they're martyrs,
Serge
basically.
Sargsyan, it's Robert Kocharyan. They're using these people.
Are they really, though? Or are these guys basically at this point kind of sailed off?
No, it's a
really
with a certain foreign certain foreign government involved.
I feel like with them at their age, I think they've kind of sailed off into the sunset with their.
No, you have to realize that they have a lot at stake. Their possessions are being nationalized. So there is a list of $400 million worth of properties from Kocharyan that the government is now in the process of repossessing. There's a similar list for Serge Sargsyan. So these people are desperate in many ways.
So we have obviously another election coming up in Armenia. Yeah. What year is it going to be in it again?
It's next year, June 21st.
So it's in June. Yeah. It's not November like here. Okay, so it's June of next year. Obviously, Armenia is in a parliamentary system. Yep. So it's not a presidential like it is in the United States. The people are continuously voting for Pashinyan to, sit in office. What do you foresee happening June of 2026? Do you think he'll be reelected as prime minister again?
I think so. I think so for a couple of reasons. One is because he has impacted the lives of average Armenians, and people are feeling it. They're doing. With all the problems that we have, they're doing better today than they were 5-6 years ago. And secondly is because so long as Kocharyan and Serge Sargsyan are in the political field, they are preventing from another opposition forming in Armenia. So a viable opposition is unable to form because Kocharyan and Serge Sargsyan are consuming all that oxygen. And so long as they're there, the people are just knee-jerk reaction going to vote also. Oh, even those that may not be very happy with the ruling party, with Katya Kampay Managir, they're going to vote. They're going to support the government.
And who's going to be running against him? Do we know yet? Or
no, we don't know, but it's going to be 5 or 6 candidates, and 90% of those candidates are going to be placeholders for Kocharyan and Serge Sargsyan. They did this in Gyumri. They had a success and they were very, very encouraged. They're like, wow, it worked. They tried to do the same thing in Echmiadzin. They got crushed because now the ruling party understands what the game is and they were able to prevent it from happening.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Zareh, we want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
Well, we're glad you enjoyed it. It was a long time in the making, but as you said, better late than never. Maybe next time you're here in the States again, we could have a sit down with you as well.
I'd love to.
Maybe have a cigar, some pizza, and then hell, maybe we could do we could do another podcast with you as well.
Sounds good.
Appreciate you, brother. Have a great have a safe flight back to the motherland.
Thank you.
And then what else? Today's podcast obviously will be up and running on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all major platforms mañana. WiseNutspodcast.com. Buy some merch, support the podcast, and we'll see you guys all next week.